My guest is Jerry Kalaf, and I'll be with you in a second. Oh, beautiful. Perfect for a rainy Monday afternoon. Oh, that's really beautiful. Whoops. It's continuing on. I have to stop that. Well, my guest today, ladies and gentlemen, is an old friend of mine, Jerry Kalaf. Hi, Jerry Kalaf.
Hi, Cathy. It's great to see you again.
It's I hate to admit this, but I'm sure you understand because you're probably the same. But every time you kind of flow through you know, my vision again, I always think, Jerry, why aren't I singing with Jerry? It's like I don't know why our paths have, like they were together for a long time and then they went, like this and then they
Well, we have some, which I didn't realize when I first met you. We have some Boston roots in common, but I still have difficulty wrapping my head around how many people are in Los Angeles, how many musicians and performers are here, and how much opportunity there is for us to create and work with different people. It's possible to go years without
I
seeing.
know.
It. I mean, I guess if we were in New York, we'd be saying the same thing. But I'm always amazed at how many people are here.
Me too. And yeah, the thing about not seeing each other, I mean, we could not see each other for 20 years
Yeah,
and still live 20 minutes from each other and work even at the same places. And yeah, it's a really, it's
and
a,
even being involved in the same kind of music.
yeah,
And the the amount of, I mean, as musicians, we're always complaining that the scene is not right and this and that. But there's a lot going on. There's a lot of people producing music here. There's a lot of there's there's a big creative community.
big.
It may be overshadowed by the commercial world, but it's bigger than a lot of people realize, I think.
I agree with you. And the last few years, a lot of those kind of young lion type of musicians from New York have moved out here. So it's even more. And boy, think if the Blue Whale was happening still, it would be packed with, you know, all those groups.
It's not the same. Not everybody feels, especially like you said, young cats. They don't feel they have to be in New York. A lot of them have gone there, done their time, and then come back here. A lot of people in the city are coming out here just to have different opportunities.
Yeah.
Uh, and I'm always amazed with the with the young guys because a lot of them were my students. I'm always amazed at how easy it is for them to travel back and forth. To go, and live in Brooklyn for 6 months and do gigs and then come here. Now, granted, a lot of times when they come back here, they're living with their mom, but it's still really impressive because I'm sure you felt the same way when we were kids, when we were living in Boston, it would be it would be a major scene just to get to New York. It's
Yeah.
4 hours away,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. Of course, we were probably less capable then.
Yeah, well, of course.
But well, Mark Ferber doesn't come and live with his mother. He actually moved here finally last year. But he has a place with his brother in New York.
Mhm.
So I mean, I guess if you're working a lot and you can afford the plane travel, it's kind of okay, right?
I think it's more what you just said, having a place.
Yeah.
If you have family in one place, or if you have a place here that you've kept for a long time, or a place there, uh, the cost of having a pad in both cities is pretty high,
Yeah.
and pretty debilitating for a lot of people.
Yeah. Like Mark he works a lot and I don't think he's a rich guy, but he works a lot. And I get the impression he's just doing what he loves to do. Like he just told me, I can't remember what gig I saw him on, but anyway, he just told me that he had just come back from Europe with Mark Copeland.
Oh yeah.
And he had always wanted to play with Mark Copeland, and there it was. So, if you can get your life rolling in a direction that you're really happy about, you know, you're enjoying what you're doing all the time. It's pretty cool.
I think it's great.
I guess that's worth not being rich.
Well, someone asked me a few months ago, they said, they asked me if I was working, and I thought about it for a second. I said, I've never worked. I'm a musician. That's why we call it playing, right? That's why it's like, hey, are you playing tonight? The term working, sometimes, if we're lucky enough to do what we're doing, I don't know if you can call it work.
Yeah. Where are you from in Boston?
Well, I went to school there. I,
Yeah.
I'm originally from upstate New York, but I lived in Boston. I lived in the Back Bay, and
Did
uh,
we were we there the same time? I don't remember. 70 I mean, I went to Berkeley 72 to 75.
what I got out of school in 72, and I hung around town a little bit, and then I went on the road, and I came back around 75, and taught at the school for a couple of years, and did gigs. There were these variety shows. They were called vaudeville shows, and the band was always from Boston,
Huh.
and the entertainers were, like old school, like, vaudeville entertainers like Donald O'Connor and people like that.
Huh.
And they would be from LA or New York, but the bus would literally pick the band up in front of Berkeley.
Jeez.
We would stand out there with our, seriously, we'd stand out there with our instruments and our tuxedo bags, and the bus would pull up in front of the 1140 Boylston Street building. And we'd get in the bus, and we would go out for like a couple months of one-nighters.
Oh
Um,
gosh.
and uh,
Wow.
that was the beginning of the end of my tenure in Boston, I think. I did that for a few years, and then I split.
Do you still know musicians who were in that band?
The, you know, it's pretty interesting, because I'm not sure we ever have the kind of relationships that we have, that we've developed as young people. No,
Yeah.
I'm still in touch with some of those musicians. I just had breakfast the other day with Nick Lane, who was the trombone player in that band. And yeah, there's few of the guys live in New York, and I'm going to New York this week, and I'm sure I'll see them. I'm not good at keeping in touch, as you know, um, but we do keep in touch, and it's pretty interesting to see how our lives have changed over the years.
Yeah, it's really an interesting life we have. By the way, there's several people here. A few people you might not know: Roland Ascaruns, Mark Baldridge, Taylor Hatch, guitarist from who goes to University of Texas, North Texas. Dan Davila, my friend, he's giving me your all music guest credits, so we'll look at that after a while. And guess who? Rick Marvin.
Oh, hi, Rick.
Talk about like not, not seeing each other for a long time. Hiya, Rick. Um, Taylor has a question for you regarding orchestration. We can just jump in there for a minute. He said, since you've done work for string orchestration, can you talk about how, as an instrumentalist, how applying your brain to write for orchestra has challenged you artistically?
Well, I don't really consider myself an orchestrator, but I have had the opportunity to write some music for string orchestra,
Yeah.
and I even have had the opportunity to have small groups of string players in my studio and record them. Um, I don't. It's not really all that different from me. The technical things are difficult. Like, for example, I play a little bit of piano. So if I'm writing music for a piano trio, which is really the area that I'm most interested in, like a Bill Evans kind of thing, uh, I can't always play what I'm writing, but I have, a real good sense of how it lays on the piano. Sometimes when I'm writing for strings, I don't have that. I just have to take a stab at it. You know what I mean? And we have technology now, and we can sequence the music so we get a sense of what it's going to sound like when real people play it. Um, I studied that stuff. I actually studied it a lot. The ranges of the instruments and the different bowings and what happens when you have 14 violins, as opposed to a smaller group. But I'm never really sure. I just don't do that on a regular enough basis. People who do that all the time. In fact, a lot of great composers hand the music off to orchestrators because to them it's a really natural thing. For me, I have to think about it, but it doesn't necessarily affect the music. In other words, if I'm hearing something and I'm thinking in terms of orchestrations, uh, I don't I'm not intimidated, by the fact that I'm now in an area that I don't function in all the time. It's interesting that you mentioned Rick Marvin, because every time I've ever written something for strings, when I've handed it off to him, it always comes back better. In other words, he does this way more than I do, and has a knack for it. So,
Yeah.
I have a sense of how I want it to sound like, but whenever I've handed it off to someone who does this for a living, so to speak,
Yeah.
they make choices not that I wouldn't make, but that I would not be aware of.
Yeah. Yeah. Bob McChesney.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I had him and Calabria on a few weeks ago, and he he taught himself how to write for strings, and he writes gorgeous stuff. Like on their records are just so beautiful. But of course, he's married to a violinist who can, kind of say, "Oh, you shouldn't do that there," or this is too difficult, or this, yeah, that's good. But he also has this sense, of supporting a singer, and not filling up every space, and he's just so musical anyway. But yeah, I was really impressed when I
That's what I was going to say, though. Sometimes, Bob is just a musical guy.
yeah.
You know what I mean? And I remember, an arranging teacher way back in the day saying, "What's the most important thing for being an arranger?" And everybody had a different opinion. Somebody said, "Well, you have to have perfect pitch." Someone says you have to know what bird played. I mean, just nutty things. And the teacher said, "No, none of that's right. You just need a musical imagination.
Yeah.
It might take you longer than the skilled orchestrator."
Yeah.
Just like when someone writes a rhythm section part,
Yeah.
always a little awkward. When the rhythm section guys see it, we always kind of know, what someone meant and didn't actually get on the paper. But I think if you have a musical imagination and you're willing to take the time to to figure out what you're hearing, you can, writing music is writing music. If you have an idea, uh, if you can hear it, you can express it.
Yeah. I forget who I was speaking with, but I don't know, maybe somebody listening will remember this, but um, we were talking about writing parts, um, and let's see, actually writing parts that are a counter melody to the melody, and not really worrying about spelling out the chords, because that happens naturally when you
Mhm.
write a counter melody with
Yeah.
it. So I thought that was really interesting. I kind of want to try that.
The best example of that is there's a Kenny Burrell album. I think it's on Verve, and I think the name of the record is called Guitar Forms.
Uh-huh.
And Gil Evans did the arrangements.
Oh.
And um, I forget which order the tunes are in, but one of the tracks is Greensleeves,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
and the rhythm section is playing, pretty conventionally, and Kenny Burrell is playing the melody in a pretty conventional manner, and there's a counter melody that Gil wrote that must take 9 bars to resolve. It's unbelievable. It's
Wow.
so far over the bar line. Um, and that to me is the best example of writing a counter line that enhances an actual melody. And as a singer, yeah, that's the deal, right? Having someone not just play chords behind you, but play, you know, a melody that enhances the melody that you're singing. You know,
I
that
have a question. I have a little question. It's interesting to me as a musical singer, who has particular tastes, you know. It always intrigues me to hear, for instance, the bass player say, the piano player is just playing too much over the singer. When I love what the piano player is doing, and or the bass player doesn't like the drummer, and I think it's great, but there's these subtleties, of course, for every instrument. But
I
yeah, go ahead.
I think you're talking about the way people hear things, and uh, musicians hear things related to their role in the band in a real particular way. And like you said, sometimes it might sound good to you and not good to someone else on the stage. Uh, Again, though, when what interests me is when people hear something that I don't hear. Uh, how does that even happen? How are we? I guess that's why we're different than computers. How can I go on a gig and hear something, and the person in the band next to me is not hearing what I'm hearing? That I've never quite figured that out, and that's what you're talking about. And I think it might have something to do with our role in the music. You're expressing the melody. That's what the song is about. I know some songs, people wrote the changes first or this and that, the
Yeah.
lyric, but you're singing the melody. So I had an interesting experience last year. I had written an arrangement uh, on the tune Stardust, I think. And it was for a live session, and the instrumentation was, I think, alto flute, soprano sax, piano, bass, and drums, guitar, um, and vibraphone. And I was playing vibes. Um, Normally, I'm playing drums, but I was playing vibes. And so we got together, and it was during the pandemic, and we had to rehearse outside
Hmm.
because we were going to go do this recording session. And everybody started playing, and it was my arrangement. I knew all the parts, and it was like, oh, it was like, oh my God, you know, what are they thinking? Everything was like slightly out of tune because we were outdoors and everybody was far apart, and I was playing a fixed pitch instrument. Uh, as a drummer, this would never occur to me. I'd be just making noise back there playing, right? And it would just be, oh yeah, it feels great. Uh, but as soon as I played a fixed pitch instrument and heard like someone playing a soprano sax, like 30 feet away, trying to stay in tune,
Yeah.
it was like, oh man. So I think it might have to do with your position in the ensemble, so to speak. But uh, it is interesting when you tell someone, "Oh yeah, that sounded great," and they said, "Really?"
Yeah. Yeah, I know. It's just God, I don't know. Reality is is very interesting. That actually makes me think of, well, this is kind of related, but not, but Benny Maupin. So, who had been before the pandemic playing several times a year
Yeah.
where you could go hear him. And which I always did because I'm just enamored with him and his playing. Um, but I would find myself waiting for those tension notes that he would play perfectly in tune, and so that the note related to all the music that was happening, you know, how only a tension note can relate, But it was perfect because it was perfectly in tune. So there's those vibrations that you get when you don't get them from notes that fit into the chord, right? And I just would wait for that because he would just go there and kind of milk it. And it was like, oh God, it was so good. Um, but anyway, I don't know. I mean, it kind of related to what we were talking about, but not totally,
I
right?
thought it was great that he was still out there playing. I haven't seen or heard of anything that he's been doing since the pandemic. But
Right.
before,
I haven't
I,
either.
I knew he was active. I thought that was great.
Yeah, I'll have to send you, I'm going to make myself a note. uh, on this record that I did a small chamber orchestra, and I was in love with this song that he wrote called "Message to Prez," and so I have this vocal group, Fish to Birds, which is improvisational. It's about six singers. So we took that song and did our Fish to Birds things with it, and then Bevan Manson. Do you know Bevan?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So Bevan took it and actually first separated it, I think, kind of into three movements, and and then we had Benny play on it,
Uh,
bass clarinet. It's really really cool. I love it. I'm going to send you that cut. I think you'll like it. It's really interesting. Yeah. So
I think Bevan is another one with the Boston connection.
he is definitely. That's where I met him. Yeah. I went home to, because I'm from Boston, so I went home to sing at, what was that place in the hotel? That jazz club in the hotel? I forget
Across the river in Cambridge.
yeah, Scullers,
Oh,
right? And I asked a friend for a referral, and she referred me to Bevan. And the first time I met him, I went to his apartment and he played me a song that he had written for Bill Evans. And weirdly, it was in my key with my love for intervals and stuff. And I just thought that was so weird because I never come across that. And I've been singing that song ever since. And but it was really fun. That was the beginning of our relationship. And I love Bevan. I think he's just a genius.
that's cool.
Yeah. We have some questions building up, and my friend Dan even posted the Kenny Burrell of Greensleeves.
Oh, cool. I hope people get a chance to hear that. That's a great example of
Yeah.
melodies.
And Dan also posted you with a tap dancer. Didn't you have you had a long thing with a tap dancer or tap dancers, right?
I played in a group called Jazz Tap Ensemble, which was a really well-known um, uh, touring tap dance group that, uh, for the most part, was a three-piece rhythm section and three dancers, and it got bigger over the years. Sometimes we'd have as many as five dancers, but that was a great gig. I did that gig basically for 30 years, and
Wow.
we went all over the world and
Huh.
did some nice stuff. And there were always good musicians in the band. It was a fun gig.
That's so cool. Looking at your bio, you played with so many varied artists, varied genres, and you really kind of covered a lot.
A lot of that is just, being a professional musician and having to make a living.
Yeah.
I mean, I pretty much, when I moved to LA, I had actually moved from Boston to New York, and I ended up having a little opportunity to record out here, came out here and stayed. And, at that point, um, I was more interested in getting a gig and making a living and being able to pay the rent. So I think that's why I've played with so many different people. Even though I had a lot of great opportunities, I think it was a little easier back then than it is now for
Yeah.
young.
Yeah, I think so too.
But a lot of it was just, I mean, I'd like to put myself out there as an artist and all this, but no, I was just, trying to get a gig and keep a gig and pay the bills.
When did you build your studio?
Well, again, that's connected to having to pay the bills, right? I was working with different people, and every once in a while I'd be in a band, or whatever we did when we were first out here, and someone would ask me to produce a session, or write some music for them, and I would do it, and when it was all over, uh, I really hadn't made much money for the effort that I had put in. So, when the computers uh, started making it easier to do some music, like using MIDI, I built a small studio. I had a condo at the time, and I had a little studio in my bedroom, and I would do tracks and at least do like some pre-production stuff, so that people could then take those tracks, go into a studio, and do the work, and I would have a little bit more involvement. And then when we moved from the condo, we bought a house. I built a little bit of a bigger studio, but it was still essentially, to do pre-production. And I actually liked it. I was really interested in the computer, and the technology, and the ability to use a computer to notate music or to record music. And little by little, it got to the point where it was actually helping me to make a living. So after doing that for a few years, my wife and I bought the place that we're in now. This was 1999, and we bought it with the intent of building this studio. And I had a feeling what was coming,
Yeah.
but I didn't know just how extreme it would be, that we'd all end up just working in our garages for the rest of our lives. I should have built a studio twice as big. It's worked out great. I've recorded a bunch of my music in here. I've done music for other people, and I use it for a lot of different things. So I guess you can say, professionally, I've really had it going for like 23 years.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, your studio, also Louis Dura's. Speaking of Louis Dura, I should get him on too. I think he's so good. Maybe I met him through you, huh?
I think so. And he's living in Germany now, but
Yeah.
he'd be a great one to get on there.
Yeah.
He'd be good.
So musical. He had a very nice studio.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
And
I've been in your studio too. I like it. It's very nice.
I remember you came in with John Prue, who I
Oh,
think was new in town.
hmm.
And I think it was just piano and voice, if I remember correctly. And it was the first time I'd heard him play. I liked his playing a lot.
Yeah. Wow. Holy moly. Somebody would like to know if you compose more on vibes or piano.
Piano. And um, probably less on the piano, sometimes just in my head.
Uh,
Uh, I even though I said that I'm not a serious orchestrator,
mhm.
I am a serious composer. I've been doing that for a long time, and it's almost always the same routine. I get an idea. I sit down at the piano and just play until I shape it the way I want to shape it. And as much as I'm into, the computer and sampling and creating, music using the technology, I don't compose any music that way. I've got, well, right now the piano's open, but if the piano was closed, I have stacks of notebooks, and I'm like an old guy. I sit there with the pencil and paper, sometimes with the piano closed, and I just write the melody and then I harmonize it. It's about as traditional an approach. It's probably the most traditional thing I do in my life.
What do you do with your compositions?
Well, uh, sometimes I just write them. Right?
Uh-huh.
Sometimes I just write them, and I've been doing it a long time, and I try to keep track of them,
Yeah.
and I will sometimes uh, write for a specific reason, but more often than not, I write music. I have my friends come over, we play it. I have a couple groups that actually only record. We only record the music here. And then sometimes, we just get together and have little jam sessions, and I pull out a new tune. Um, and sometimes um, I I if I like the music, I get enough uh, good music together, I'll actually record a CD. In the old days, you'd record a CD and try to get a deal. Then now that it got to the point where you just record a CD and put it out there, and now I don't even make the CD. I just, it's just a digital thing. I just put it up on Apple Music.
Uh-huh.
I because I had written so much music when I was first doing the gig with Jazz Tap Ensemble, which for me started in 1984. Um, and I think it went up to about 2010. And when after I'd been with that group for about 10 years, the I got a Meet the Composer Award from the NEA. I got a little grant, and I took that money and made a record, I mean a CD of my tunes with a trio, and they would sell it on the gigs, like we all do. It was kind of fun. But what happened is somebody picked up the CD and used one of the tunes in a movie, I think, and it started a whole new career for me. So now a lot of the music that I produce with the intent of of licensing it for other other use. And so now I would do this anyway, but now I actually get paid to do it. So it's kind of cool.
That's cool. Yeah, that's a whole other career. Sometimes I think about going after that, and it's just not exactly what I'm doing, and I'm doing so much of what I'm doing. The thought of it is really appealing, but it's like, oh God, I don't think I can go after that because I mean, you can get anything. You can get anything done, but you really have to focus on it and be persistent, right?
Well, I have to say that I have focused on writing music and getting it played.
Yeah.
I haven't been all that aggressive about licensing it and making like a ton of bread or anything from it. You know what I mean? But I've been lucky with it. It's kind of, if you put enough stuff out there,
Yeah.
you know, like I went on Apple Music the other day and realized, oh man, look at all these records, all these recordings I have. Uh, and some of them are cool. I don't usually go so far as to actually put something out there unless it has some value.
Yeah.
So some of it's cool. And the other day, uh, m- my wife was listening to some music in the house, and somehow she triggered, Apple Music to just start playing my stuff, and it
Yeah.
went on for hours. you know, uh, and it didn't really repel me. It wasn't bad. And that's really the main motivation factor, at least for me. But it is cool. Um, I mean, I don't get a charge out of going to a movie and hearing the music.
Uh-huh.
I get a charge out of seeing my name at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
Hearing the music with dialogue over it, you need a stethoscope to hear it. Uh, it that doesn't do that much for me.
Yeah.
But it is a cool way for a jazz musician to make a living, because I'm not convinced you can do just blowing gigs and have it work out in today's world.
Yeah.
I don't I don't think you can sustain that.
Yeah, unless you're 20 years old and you don't care about how you live, basically.
Oh yeah, yeah, but you won't be able to sustain it. That's what I'm saying, because you can't stay 20 forever.
Yeah. Yeah. You can't?
I have a student he's a fabulous drummer. Did great all through school. He did the Monk Institute. He went to Berkeley. He went to New York. He did a bunch of really cool gigs, and now he's the drum teacher at Cal Arts. And
Oh,
uh, he loves it. He's like, he said, I'm ready to have a pad and not be on the road all the time, and he's probably early 30s.
yeah.
So yeah, if you want to sustain it, if you want to be able to keep playing and keep playing music, you have to find a way. You have to find a way to extend your longevity, so to speak.
Yeah. There has to be some other things that happen.
I think.
Um, kind of reminds me of we were talking about this new club, um, Kulak's Woodshed, and I explained to Jerry what the situation is, which is really that it's a recording. It's kind of a recording situation. You go in, it's a really nice scene. It's very comfy and excellent piano, drum set there, everything. But what you're getting is this three moving camera video, live edited in the back by a guy who's been doing it for 20 years, and a Pro Tools session, and you can invite a number of guests to pay to break even and give yourself a little money. So it's really a cool situation, but it kind of breaks the mold of the normal venue. So again, we're moving into unusual and creative ways to keep playing.
I think that's really cool, and that's probably going to be more normal
Yeah.
than the playing at the bar with people drinking.
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, Smalls has been doing this for a year in New York. That's a little club in the Village around the corner from the Vanguard.
Yeah.
They've been streaming music, and you go in there, you do a gig, and you sign the give them permission to broadcast your performance, and the sound is not bad. It sounds good. It's fun to watch. I don't know if I lived next door to the club. If I'd be watching in my house, I'd probably just go to the club. But the sight lines are good. I bet you if this is a three-camera shoot that you're talking about, it's probably terrific. And you said they're also at the same time live streaming it.
Yeah. Yep.
That's very cool.
Yeah, the video is really nice. And a Pro Tool session. And the piano's mic'd, the drums are mic'd. It's really it's a good, unusual situation. Um, Taylor wants to know, is your student Jonathan Pinson?
Yeah.
Yeah, Taylor knows him. I guess, wow, he took over for Joe LaBarbera.
Yeah.
Cool.
Jonathan's a great drummer and a great guy, and probably, I think, was 8 years old when he started studying with me. He was a serious talent and a really good human being.
Cool. Um, let's see. Dan has also posted with the comment that this is a beautiful performance uh, of you doing By Moonlight.
I have no memory of that, but I appreciate the comment. That's nice.
Well, we could, we can, I mean, let's see, we'll just show you and ask you if you, oh, that's with Lewis. Oh, this was a long time ago, huh?
Yeah, that's Lewis and Larry Steen.
Ah,
That's pretty cool. I think I've never seen it.
where what? Well, let's see where it was. It was.
Oh, I know where it was. I think it's that church in Santa Monica that we used to all do gigs on.
Oh, Very beautiful.
Yeah,
Wow,
guys are good players.
that's really lovely. Jerry, you sound so beautiful. Such a beautiful drummer.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Really beautiful. Um, yeah, I was going to say something else, but I forgot. Um, well, let's see. We have some more questions. I always like this question. Taylor asks this a lot, but he said, what record or records do you think are underrated? And why?
You mean commercial recordings, not recordings of mine, right?
Right, and in any genre.
That's a good question. Uh, I don't know. There's so much great music out there, and I guess what I think what it is some of the music by younger players and composers it is probably underrated because there's so much and there's so much it's so easy to record music now, so music doesn't get the attention that it deserves. Like at one point you had to jump through so many hoops to get your music out there, right? You had to get a deal. That was almost impossible,
Yeah.
and then there had to be distribution, and the record company had to be paid back. Um, and so a lot of the music that I listened to coming up, I think it had a lot of like critical acclaim. But there's a there's a vibes player. I think he's from France. His name is Simon Mollier or Simone Mollier. Uh, And this guy is making great music, and I don't think anybody knows about it. And I think the way it might be spelled might be Mollier, like the French for mole.
Yeah.
And um, I think there's probably a lot of people like that. Have I mean, I know a lot of drummers are hip to uh, to Mark Juliana, but he's made a couple really great records in the last few years, and I don't even see them reviewed. So yeah, I can't really answer that question, but now it's food for thought. I'm trying to think of, um, well, here's a great example. Here's a great example. My friend Barry Coates in the last year has made three very similar recordings. One of them is New Dreams. That's the first piece of music you played. That's me and Jimmy Haslip and Barry. And then he made another one called Rainbow Warriors with me and Jimmy and Barry, and on other cuts, Jimmy Johnson. And then there's a new one that hasn't come out yet. That's all duo playing, just Barry and I. Uh, these are great recordings, and they have a consistency. They have a similar vibe,
Yeah.
um, and I actually, I, I can't understand why you wouldn't see like reviews of these records in Guitar Player magazine, or that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Uh, I'd have to say they're really underrated recordings.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm not sure. I can't even answer that question. The more I think about it, the more I get curious, because there's so much music out there. Like if you talk to people our age,
Yeah.
we all listen to Miles Smiles. We all listen to Bill at the Vanguard. We all listen to Now He Sings, Now He Sobs. We all listen to uh, I don't think those records were underrated because everybody said, wow, those are fantastic recordings, right?
Yeah.
Um, there might be too much product out there. I think that's how recordings become underrated. But I think I'm the wrong guy to ask. I can't honestly answer that question. That's a good question too.
Well, you said a lot of things in your answer, and um, first of all, like you're number 509 of my guests. So I've been doing this all through the pandemic, and I've been truly blown away by how many of us are creating art on the planet. And I've come to feel like we're actually balancing out the planet. All of this art that is pouring out, the music, and mostly it's jazz musicians who I've interviewed, but we're really balancing out the planet. I mean, it would the politics would be totally destroyed our planet by now if it wasn't for us. And um, like you said there, well, first of all, also you talked about reviews, but in this day and age, um, I would say almost 100%, maybe slightly less, of the reviews that actually get accomplished are because you pay someone to use their lines of
Yep.
connection into the magazine or whatever it is. And I agree with you. I mean, that's part of the people I interview are people I know, right? Even if I haven't seen them for a long time, like you. Eventually, all the dots connect. But then part of it is I'm listening to Apple Music or Spotify or whatever, and I all of a sudden I hear something that is so attractive, and I look into that person and then I contact them, and that sets me on a little path. There's so much great music out. I
I
mean,
think this is what we were talking about before we started. Like, we were talking about having not seen each other for a while, and we spoke about how many people are creating art here. That in Los Angeles, it's huge. There's so many great musicians, and I think this is going on everywhere.
yeah,
Maybe not with quite as many people. Not just New York. I think you could go to Boston, you could go to Cleveland, Portland, and um, because I think people have to do it, and
yeah,
um, because there's so much out there. I guess you could think of it as being, you know, not getting the recognition that it deserves. See, this question has got me. It really has me interested now because really, I made it more complicated than it needed to be. The question was just, hey, what records should people hear more?
right,
And I just think they should hear music more.
yeah.
You know what I mean? They should just, I don't know. Do people actually sit down and listen to music now, or is it always on just as background?
Well, that's a big question. I remember I had a problem with my eyes, and I couldn't. I had to like keep my eyes closed for a few days, and so I just listened to music. It was so wonderful. It was so amazing. I also used to have a boyfriend who we used to actually lay on the floor in the dark and listen to music. He was a bass player. That's and we just that was it. We just listened, laid there and listened, and it was
I still do
great.
that now. I turn the lights off here in the studio and just listen to music
You
sometimes.
do? That's great. And I also used to I used to have my 5 CD, player in the kitchen, and I would leave on 5 CDs, those 5 CDs for 2 weeks.
Yeah,
And I would just, and I wouldn't, I would just listen to one CD first and then the next one. And that was great too. I loved that. I found that really changed changed me,
Do you
how I sing.
remember the teacher at New England Conservatory who became really well known as a teacher of like jazz improvisation? Uh, I mean, he's kind of famous, and his name.
Is it Bob Stoloff or
No, it's a little bit of an unusual name. I mean, you would recognize the name if I could. It's on if I could pull it out of my hard drive
was he
here.
older?
He's older than us.
Yeah.
He's retired now. He played piano, and he would even do gigs occasionally at Michael's Pub.
Oh,
And he became really well known, as like as an improvisation teacher and like an ear training instructor. And he's written a couple books, and one of the things about his teaching method is this kind of extreme listening, where
oh.
you have to listen to a piece of music over and over again, for like weeks, just the same tune, which to me seems like it could be torture, but uh,
You have
he,
to like it first.
he got great results out of it. Um, I'll think of his name eventually.
I have to share with you a name that you have to check out. This I've kind of been going. I went to France this year, and I've just been here. I'm looking for this one particular one. I've just been kind of falling in love with French jazz musicians. I have to say, they're just cool and they're so musical, and there's a nice community there. This guy is this guy right here, Daniel Ivanek, right here.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
And
I know Gil Goldstein. I mean, this is probably
yeah,
a nice recording.
this is gorgeous. But
I'd like
he also
to-
has this recording called The Crooners, and it's a smaller group, and um, it's just you would love it. It's gorgeous. The subtlety is overwhelming. It's so beautiful. I interviewed him. He's a bass player and a producer, and he's part of this small group of guitar players actually who hang out, get together, and just gorgeous.
there's some great musicians there, and there's a woman who plays drums. Her name is Julie, I think Suoro or so. I mean, I can't come close to pronouncing it, let alone. I was very impressed with her playing when I heard her play,
Oh,
and I know she's friends with my friends Gerard and Leslie, so they would know who she is.
I saw them when I went. I saw Gerard and Leslie.
Oh, they're great people.
Yeah, we went to where they were performing, and it was really nice. I sat in, and
Is
it
that
was
Shah?
very French, very wonderful. Chez Papa, right? Yeah. She's sounding friggin' great.
Oh,
Jeez.
she's singing all the time.
Oh,
She's a great singer. She's a great performer, and um, she's singing. She's a professional singer,
yeah,
which people here, because of how many people there are here, sometimes don't get the chance to work every night.
I know.
She's probably singing 3 or 4 times a week, I would think.
Yeah, and they're doing all kinds of, they do concerts and they travel to festivals, and they work. And yeah, I agree with you. It's just I always say that to my students, no matter what their age is, I feel a little bad because when we came up, we had, even though it wasn't all jazz, we were working like 10 gigs a week,
Oh yeah,
right?
yeah. You could sing. You'd be singing with a band. Like maybe doing like top 40 tunes, or
Yeah.
club dates doing standards.
Right.
I don't know if you can replace that in the woodshed.
Yeah, I don't know either. I don't know.
I'm
We-
supposed to. because I'm a teacher sometimes, but I don't know.
Yeah, we were very lucky um, to probably hit kind of the end of it, the end of that, right?
I think so.
Yeah. Um, you did, because I interviewed Barry a few months ago. You did, you like produced a record with different guitar players or
Oh
something?
yeah, yeah. I did that last year. This was fun. The album is called The Guitar,
Yeah,
and I had written a bunch of music that I thought would really lend itself to a guitar player.
yeah,
And we'd get together and play once in a while, and the tunes weren't really hard, but they were just tricky enough and they were stylistically different enough that it would have been asking a lot of to get one guy to learn all that music. Um, think about if you're a pianist and you have a trio
yeah,
and you've written some music. You can hire a bass player and a drummer, and the bass player and the drummer are trained accompanists. That's that's how they evaluate their life, their playing is how well they accompany the melody. And so you sit down and you say, okay, the name of this song is Cathy's Blues. It goes like this. And you play the tune, and your accompanists accompany you, and you're halfway there.
yeah.
But if you're a drummer, you say, well, the name of this song is Cathy's Blues, and it goes like this: ding, 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 and the next tune is Cathy's Waltz, and it goes like this: ding, 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 right? It becomes much harder to convey what you want, and that's getting back to the orchestration question. Why I've gotten involved in notation and writing music and making sure the voicings are what I want, because people can't read your mind. So anyway, I had all this music that I thought lent itself to the guitar, but I quickly realized, boy, this is asking a lot, of one of my guitar player buddies, right?
Mm.
So I got a bunch of guitar player buddies, and they each learned a couple tunes. Some of them learned one, some of them learned two, and we recorded made this recording. Barry's on it. Larry Kuntz is on it. Reiner Civili is on it. Paul Villapiano, fantastic guitarist, is on it. Gary Solt is on it, and I recorded a few other tunes that didn't make it onto the recording, but I'll probably use them at some other point. So the recording is the guitar, and there were different rhythm sections. I think Tom Rainier and Trey Henry and me
Yeah,
were one rhythm section. Rich Eames, Dominic Genova, and me were the other rhythm section.
cool.
And yeah, it's kind of a cool recording. Yeah. And the common denominator is the guitar and the fact that the same composer wrote all the music.
Yeah. Um, I, I'm sure it's hard to choose, but do you think that there's a one of the songs that we can listen to?
Yeah, listen to um, another show tune for Bill. I
Okay.
bet that's the first tune.
With Larry Kuntz.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to, I won't run it for the full 8 minutes.
I should have picked a shorter one.
That's all right. That's really beautiful. Yeah. It's lovely. Yeah. um, Roland says the guitar is a beautiful album through and through. Even though it's guitar centric, it gives me more of a pianistic feeling. But that's just weird me. By the way, Jerry is now 0.00003 richer. I bought 3 of his albums on iTunes.
There you go.
Uh,
I think this, speaking of the streaming thing, I think, you know, we're in the nascent stage of this streaming business. Remember, way before our time when musicians started playing on recordings and they were hardly paid anything for it, and then the unions got involved and there was a special payments and, it got to the point where you could be a recording musician and make a living. Eventually, they're going to have to find a way to compensate us for
the
streaming music
streaming.
because I know we're some years off from it, but boy, there's a lot of people are making a lot of money off this, and it's sure not the composers and the performers.
That's for sure. I know. Sorry, I'm hearing my phone buzz. I wanted to pick it up so it wouldn't buzz. And I'll be damned if I can find where it is. It's definitely in front of me somewhere. Don't you hate that, man?
I just keep mine on
It's
silent.
not it's not here, but that's so weird. It has to be on the desk because I heard it buzzing. Well, I guess I'll find that later. Yeah, I know. I mean that's a very positive attitude you have, and I'd like to believe that it's actually true that they.
I think it will be there. No one really knows how to control it right now, but eventually they can't keep getting the content for free. And I'm not talking about the consumer at all. I'm talking about the people who are making the money off the consumer. In
Yeah.
other words, they're in the middle. There's the content creator, and
Uh,
there's the end recipient, the person who's hopefully enjoying the music. And there seems to be some place in the middle where the money's getting stopped.
yeah, somebody's making some money. I mean, that 0.0003, that's going to us. Who's getting the rest of it? You know?
Well, those Apple Music fees. That's why Apple is the richest company in the world now, right?
That they are.
I think they are.
I don't even know.
You're richer than me.
I don't know. I thought Amazon was, but who knows?
Oh, yeah, well, same thing. Yeah.
Isn't that my phone in back of me? No, it's not actually. Roland, can you come over and find it? It's really weird because I heard it buzzing. So to hear it buzzing, it has to be on the desk, wouldn't you say? And I'll be absolutely damned if I see it. It's really weird, but anyway, I don't need it right now. It's kind of a conundrum. So yeah, it's nice to talk to you about this stuff because um, sometimes I get the feeling like, is it just me, or is or is this happening like this? So your ideas are my ideas. I agree with you about all that stuff, and um, like I said before, um, uh, I think that all the all the music and the art is balancing the planet out, and kind of reminds me. This is kind of a strange comparison, but it is a comparison to me. So I had a friend who was a health nut. He he created vitamins and he sold vitamins. He did a lot of spiritual work. He was really, strong. All of a sudden, he got cancer, and his life, fell apart as he went down. And a lot of people were saying, I can't understand why he would go down, because he was so involved with being a healthy individual. But the point was that he might have gone down years earlier if he hadn't been on that path. That's kind of what I feel like, somehow related to the music scene and what's happening, and um, what we're talking about, like how it's a little confused right now. Like, how do you make a living, and how do you sell your music? Not CDs, but how do you sell your music? And um, the streaming thing, and I think these things might have happened before, but they happened in a timely way. It was kind of one thing happened, and then out of that grew some branches, and those things happened, and those grew branches, you know. And yeah, it's an interesting time to be in this business, you know, very interesting.
It might be even better to take the business out of it. You mentioned how people involved in the creation of art are saving the planet, right? And maybe it's something as simple as if someone asked you, well, what's the best thing I can do, for my society, for the culture that I live in. And you, you could say something as simple as just be a good citizen,
Yeah,
just be a good person. And I think if you're involved in the practice of music, I'm not that, I'm making a distinction here. And I'm not saying you're an artist or you're creating, something of importance, but just the practice of music, getting up in the morning and practicing your instrument, and devoting some energy
yeah,
to to it, um, is kind of like being a good citizen. It's you're not causing any harm. And it feels good, and you feel better when you do it than when you don't do it. And if more and more people can do it, um, I think that's a lot of good that can be created. I often say when people are complaining about something, I say, well, just buy a set of drums. That'll do it. It's just fun, and if it puts you in a good frame of mind, You're not going to chase someone down the freeway with your car. You know what I mean? You're not going to you're not going to do all the stuff that seems to you know represent our society falling apart. And everybody says, oh, we're going down the tubes, and they come up with an example, of road rage, or someone
Yeah.
yelling at someone in the grocery store, or whatever. I think if you had a drum set, you'd be less likely to do that. I'm being facetious, of course, but there's an element of that that's worth thinking about.
I agree with you because I always thought of practicing as a religious experience because if you think about it, religion is something you practice that brings you closer to God. And that's what we're doing. We're practicing something that makes us feel connected to that, whatever, however you want to call it, the aesthetic universe or the magic or whatever, which could be interpreted as God too. And so it's definitely like a meditation, right? Um, and yeah, I agree with you. I think it's great.
I don't know if you even have to get that deep into it. Like, I have a few students, and I'm always encouraging them to practice what they don't know. In other words, work on what you don't do well.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much, an accepted way to develop on your instrument.
Yeah.
But when they leave and I sit down to practice, I do the exact opposite. I just play what I like to play and what I'm already good at because it just feels good.
Yeah.
Uh, it's not the best way to practice. I'm not encouraging anybody to do what I do, but there's something about just playing your instrument, and feeling, close to it, feeling connected to it. Uh, and this isn't the way to become the best musician. I'm not making any representation of that at all. But it's just a great way to pass the time.
Well, you're right. And you can even take it to like, you spend hours practicing or whatever you're working on, and then you just have to play with enjoyment. You
Yeah,
have to because what's it worth otherwise?
yeah, I agree.
Yeah. I did a fun gig yesterday. It was just the right group of people, to play with. It was over at the Urban Press. And I invited my friend Mon David to sing with me because Mon and I are compadres in different things. We have this improv group that we've sung with for about 8 years. There's 6 or 7 of us, and we just do a cappella improv together.
When you say a cappella improv, do you start from a form, or do you literally just?
Yeah, totally improv.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Oh, well, I told you about it. It's called Fish to Birds. That was on the Benny Maupin tune. But yeah, it's really fun. And I wouldn't say exactly that we're all real jazz singers, but we have we're all improvisers. And most everybody has a foot in jazz. And because we've sung together so long, we have similar temperaments, you know. So forms come, but not musical forms particularly. It's kind of like, okay, I'll start, with a pattern, bouquet to do bit, and then somebody will either do a counter or many times we'll go in and out of harmonies on we'll grab something that someone's doing, jump on with a harmony. Maybe another person will do the same thing, and then at some point, some musical point, that dissolves. So we're called Fish to Birds because of that. What's the artist? The black and white draw artist who does like there's fish first, and then as it goes higher, the fish actually become birds.
Yeah.
You know. Anyway, so Anyway, Mon and I are in that group. And then Mitchell Long, are you familiar with him? The guitarist, who is just, he's like, he's really an incredible guitar player, just incredible. And Edwin Livingston on
Yeah,
bass.
very good.
And actually, we had Joey De Leon. And I thought he was going to be playing traps, but he was playing congas the whole time. And he's, I have to say, you know, it's not so common for the conga player to be able to play the whole jazz gig and sound like in the genre, you know?
And not make it turn, not have it turn into a Latin gig, right?
Yeah, it was great. And personalities were wonderful. We were all very lighthearted and, you know, free, you know, not restricted in certain ways. It was great. We had so much fun.
Are there ever lyrics involved?
Oh, well, yeah, we were doing songs. But in Fish to Birds, yes, sometimes there's lyrics involved. Like we'll either get on some kind of a roll, like it just actually just occurs. You know, it could be anything. Like sometimes they've used my name for some reason. Cathy Segal-Garcia, Cathy Segal, you know, or whatever. And then there's one girl who's especially good at kind of a rap thing. So sometimes we'll have a body underneath, and then she'll go on a rap, you know. Um,
That's pretty interesting. I wonder if this ever happens when you get together with this group. I am part of a group that does a similar thing. There's four of us, and we haven't gotten together ostensibly since the virus because we couldn't get in the same room.
yeah,
Uh, but for about 5 or 6 years before the pandemic, we would meet once a week, and we would meet over here, and we would turn off the lights and play in the dark, and record it.
uh,
And we usually record three pieces, and out of the three, sometimes one would be cool, you
yeah.
know. And it was completely improvisational, no preconceived ideas, and just someone makes a sound, and someone else responds to it. And we kept the lights off so we wouldn't have any, way of relating other than what we were hearing. But the thing that was always hard is it's really hard not just to completely lose any preconception, that you might have, like, oh, the guys are coming over today. Well, I've been working on this idea. I'm going to try it and see how they react. Uh, it's hard to get that out of your head, that goal-oriented thing. And it's always also hard to, since everybody has their own style, their own way of playing music, to try to not let that, immediately go in that direction. Try to keep your mind as open as you can and not let how you normally want to play take precedence over what you're hearing. I was wondering if your group experiences that.
Well, I'm not sure. Sometimes we do specific exercises just to stretch out, and not fall into what we think is the same kind of pattern over and over again. As you can imagine, a lot of times it doesn't harmonically move, unless somebody kind of leads it in that direction. And then it kind of harmonically moves to familiar patterns, like, four chord patterns. And then, away from specific exercises, well, I'm just trying to think. I mean, each one of us kind of prefers a certain time. I kind of like waltzes because we never get into waltzes. We always get into like kind of the do get do because it's easy and it's fun. And One of us likes 5/4 a lot, and two of them at least, or three, like that. Kind of. One of the girls spends a lot of time in Senegal, and she's a dancer as well. So she brings that into it. So everybody brings, something. Mon David is Filipino, and he's very rhythmic, and so he brings that kind of thing into it. It's it's really fun to do it. It's great. But one time we had a lesson with the jazz singer Rhiannon. I don't know if you're familiar with her, and so it was great because she said, try exercises that stretch you out of your comfort zone. You continually kind of go into the same thing, which is good. And also, I mean, what are we doing it for? We're doing it for fun. We're doing it for expression, all the good things that art is for. But we're not doing it to become famous or anything. But, so falling into things like a piece that would be very musical is great. But, it's improvisation. So sometimes it's not great.
Yeah.
you
And
know?
I found when we were doing this and we were doing it on a regular basis
Yeah.
that it did matter. That even if you're doing something that's in theory totally in the moment and without any preconceived ideas,
Yeah. Yeah.
to have the same people involved in it
Yeah.
and on like a weekly or even a monthly basis, you develop uh, a way of connecting that's interesting and different than the way we do when there's an existing form.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's definitely gotten me over the years more appreciative of that. Um, you know, as a matter of fact, at Kulak's, um, I'm basically focusing on Friday and Thursdays, but with a few other things. I'm gonna probably bring colleges in on Sundays and it's all evening stuff. But Fridays I want high quality jazz stuff, and then Thursdays kind of fallen into I'm trying to allow the universe to lead me on what to do. But the as of last night, I think like the first Thursday will be Brazilian music. Second Thursday will be free music. I spoke to Vinny Golia last night,
Very good.
which is so exciting to me because first of all, I'm extremely impressed and always have been with Vinny Golia. He's like a hero in that music. He
Yes, he's never wavered.
never, and he's created so much great music, and I don't think enough people really come to listen to that style. Um, Brad Dutz had that series for a while on Thursday nights, which was fabulous.
In fact, this group that used to play free music, we played out there a few times.
Oh, well, maybe,
It was a place we could do that in,
yeah,
and the minute we got in an environment where there were people there, and there were lots of people there because everybody knows us, it changed. It was really an effort to let go and not go with what we know. I
yeah.
re- I remember that. I think we did it twice, and both times, uh, I didn't think we were entirely successful. But like the series you're involved in, we got a cool video out of it. You know,
It's so cool to do that. And yeah, I definitely want to introduce. Also, I'm working on like the third Thursday of the month, actually bringing back guitar night
yeah,
in a little different form. John Pisano doesn't really want to do it anymore because he's older and has
yeah,
body issues. But yeah, like starting off with even just two guitar players in an evening, and if they want to bring more they can. But uh, I missed that, and then I was also thinking of possibly another thing that people don't really get to see a lot, but they do. They have in the last pandemic years. Catalina's has actually had high level duos, singers and piano players like Dee Dee Bridgewater and who is the pianist, is really a great piano player from New York. Anyway, uh, Samara Joy played with Tamir Hendelman. So I think uh, the pandemic kind of inspired that, but people don't really get to see that very much, like a really good duo, with a vocalist,
If like you said, there's a nice piano in there, that changes everything.
I know.
When Brad had the was doing the gallery thing out in Sunland, they didn't have a piano, so
Right.
by its nature, it was sonically different. If there's a great piano in this room, you could do piano and voice because you don't. There's not many opportunities to hear that.
I know.
Um, and you could even do trios. Think how little opportunity there is for piano trios to play in LA because none of the places have good instruments.
Yeah.
You know,
Yep. And they're expensive to go into. This probably would be like a $20 cover, and you don't have to buy anything. It's a listening room, you know. Yeah, I think it's valuable. I really do think it's valuable.
well, it's in a good location. I'm surprised, because I don't live far from there. I'm in Studio City. I'm surprised that I didn't know about it. Uh, but I know the room
Yeah.
from the old days.
I
Um,
wonder what room I wonder what the name of that room
I
was.
bet if I could remember the name, you would remember it.
Maybe Paul actually knows, Paul Kulak. He might know because it was that before he got it, right?
You're across from John's Market, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I know the.
Yeah. That's wild, huh? Yeah. Um, so have I not touched on something that you would like to talk about in as far as your own creations?
No, I think just the fact that you've paid some attention to the music that I'm writing and recording, I think that's pretty cool. That's just something that I'd like to keep doing as long as I can. Um, I like playing with people, but I'm really more interested in writing and recording my own stuff at this point. So no, I think you have covered it.
Taylor has a question about teaching. Um, he said, "What are your thoughts on what do you think is lacking in music education now?"
I think there's a lot of jazz education going on now compared to what there used to be. But I think the, the one of the hardest uh, parts of teaching people how to play an instrument is there needs to be a way um, for them to exercise what the teacher is showing them. When uh, back, when I was a kid, even before I went to college, I remember my drum teacher when I was a kid. He didn't want to take a student who had studied with another teacher. And that used to be a thing in New York. Teachers felt really proprietary about their students. And then I think there were also teachers who wouldn't take a student unless they were in a school music program. In other words, yeah, you can study with me, but you have to be playing in an ensemble at the same time. And that's my criticism. I really encourage my students, but I don't insist upon it. I should, but I don't. I encourage them to have a musical outlet for what they're learning from me, because when that has happened, they've improved at so fast compared to just studying with me.
Yeah.
And I think if music education in general uh, was more experiential and less theoretical, man, that would make all the difference. Well, you went to Berkeley, right? So you remember all that music theory we learned, all that harmony. That was incredible. I mean, it was great stuff, and we were there at the right time, when it was nicknamed the Chord Factory, and that was great stuff. But I'm not sure you couldn't learn all that stuff in 1 year if you already played the piano.
I agree with you. And I've talked to people who instead, like, God, there was one person I was talking to who went to school, but then he got this teacher off campus that he went to all the time, and he was just playing and finding, more hands-on kind of application type of stuff.
I think that's a really important thing. If I had any criticism of the way music is being taught right now, I would really try to connect it with with the playing experience. And let's take it a step farther, since I think everybody knows that to be true, and tries to make that happen. It's just that they can't always make it happen. How about studying composition? There are very few schools that actually have composition programs. It's all performance oriented or education oriented. And if you could uh, study uh, different ways of composing music, whether you are interested in advancing your knowledge of harmony or orchestration, like we talked about at the beginning, or the ability to write, an original melody. If you could immediately hear it performed by players, then a lot of questions would be answered. I think if we could make music education a little bit more connected to the act of making music, um, that would be a big deal.
Yeah. Um, there's a Oh, by the way, Leslie Lewis came on.
Oh, I listen.
Bonjour. Um, Taylor asked a question which relates to what we're talking about, which I just am always, we try as teachers, we try and inspire our students. He's asking about, um, he asked specifically how technology kind of affects short attention spans of young students, and how do you inspire students basically to have a whimsical curiosity, and as a teacher, I'm always, I mean, it depends on the student, obviously, but I'm always trying to stir up a love for what they're doing, and a curiosity and an adventure into the whole musical and creative experience. It's hard.
It is, and I've never been able to do that. I know teachers who have. I've studied with teachers who have, but I have never been able to um, awaken someone's curiosity, And when I've done it, like with my student Jonathan that we were talking about a little while ago,
Hmm.
who's now the drum teacher at Cal Arts.
Yeah.
Uh, if if it wasn't all his doing, I could take credit for it. But I don't have a track record of having done that. In other words, every once in a while I get a student and they get inspired and go on and do, great things and have a real curiosity about the world. Uh, but if it were coming from me, I would have a more consistent track record. I've never found a way I've never found a way to inspire a student to practice and be curious. Uh, some students just are. I would like to think I had something to do with that, but honestly, I don't think I do.
I think that teachers have very subtle influences a lot of the time. You don't even know what inspires your student.
Yeah,
You might have said three words, and somewhere in the back of their mind there was a little switch that got flipped, and 10 years later it might come out. But I think, you know, I think I think we, if we're leading them towards the honest truth of the whole thing, it's I think it's fine. People are who they are. They get what they get, you know.
well, that's the way I look at it. I have a lot of students that are having great lives in music right now.
Uh,
So I take a little credit for it, but I think it's mostly the student. And I don't know what causes some students to be interested and involved, and what attracts them to music. I always thought with music it should be so obvious. You know what I mean? There's no reason to do it unless you're attracted to the art of making music.
yeah,
So it shouldn't be an issue where like you need a teacher to inspire you. But I guess it is.
yeah, yeah. I'm very, I have a very mishmash of levels of students right now. I have one girl who's 15 who really likes it but hasn't quite entered into the reality of what music really is, you know. And then I have some older students who, um, you know, they know, but they're fighting uh, old habits. So
Well,
the,
you probably have students also where it's a practical uh, uh, thing that they need in their lives. Maybe they're actors,
yeah,
and they need to have a sense of what a singer goes through, or a performer. And so it's not like they have a real instrument. You know what I mean?
yeah.
But that's you can impart a lot of that and not feel like you have to turn them into great singers.
That brings up an interesting question. So for singing, I can relate to what you just said, and sometimes I don't push a student to be anything but what they are. I mean, I always try and do that, but if they're not the greatest singer, but they have a lot of connection to telling the story, then I like that, you
Yeah.
know. Does that happen in drums? Not really, right?
No, no, and drums, no one really, wants. No one is ever forced to play the drums. I've had a couple actors who had to learn how to play the drums for a role.
Yeah.
But no, no, if you want to play the drums, you're usually fighting everybody around you. Like your parents they want you to play the violin, right? So the student who comes to me uh, for the most part has some connection to rhythm,
Uh,
and they're attracted to that. And they just need to be inspired, which is that's the part that I don't really feel I have the inspiring thing together. But no, I think when someone wants to play a musical instrument, although, this is Hollywood. I remember when I was working with Jazz Tap Ensemble, we would do these huge workshops where dancers from all over the world would come and study with us. And some of them would be like fantastic dancers. And then other ones, it'd be like, why on earth are you here? But then after I got to know them, I would realize they were actors and they needed to have that as part of their resume, that they had at least a knowledge of how to tap dance, right? And that's probably what you're talking about. Someone will come to you, they're never going to make, a recording, singing Sarah Vaughan tunes,
Yeah.
but they're going to be able to simulate what a singer feels when they're
Yeah.
performing.
Yeah. I think one thing also that I find particularly fascinating is you get a singer who's, let's say she's a semi-pro. He or she is a semi-pro, and which means they can sing the songs and they know the music, what's coming out with the musicians enough so they're not going to totally destroy it. They're actually going to do it. But what they do now is playing it so straight that there's hardly any meaningful connection, right? Then you lead them, especially in workshops, this happens. You lead them into really meaningful connection. Like all of a sudden, and sometimes I do it when I'm producing singers too, because I'm a singing teacher and stuff. I can lead the singer in the studio towards this. But so they connect and they're like, brilliant. I mean, it's perfect. It's connection. And then they don't hold that because they're not working all the time. You have to do it all the time. You have to practice whatever it is that you want to get, or be. So, but I find that really fascinating too. That whole little scenario, here's the person, they are how they are. They can be brought to, perfection. I mean, what I consider perfect, which is connection. And then the fact that can they keep that going,
Well, I would think that would be, from a teacher's perspective, in some ways more rewarding than, you know, giving them vocal exercises to improve their range and
Yeah.
their tone quality.
Yeah.
Uh, because sometimes you can't improve their range and their tonal quality.
Right.
You can teach someone how to get inside a lyric
Yeah.
and how to have it mean something to them and in turn mean something to the listener. You
Yeah.
know, that
Yeah.
seems like it would be more valuable uh, to go to a teacher to learn, than there's probably I'm sure you can teach someone to sing more in tune by giving them
Sure.
vocal exercises and ear training exercises.
Yeah, definitely.
I bet the former is more satisfying to you, though.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because like I have a student who's very musical, just can't be denied because he'll come out with spot on musical things. However, there's something about how he approaches singing and also about his technique that's um, he has this perspective. I'm sure you've seen this in your students. He has this perspective, whatever it is, that tells him, for instance, to be more serious or to push to do it, which is the opposite of what he needs to do. He needs to not be that serious about it, and he needs to be lighter, and use the air to make sound. And when he does that, perfect intonation, beautiful sound. So, for me, that can be challenging especially for someone who's not, who doesn't really care about being a professional.
Do you find it's easier to teach someone who's not a professional singer but plays an instrument, like the guitar player who sings,
Yes,
as opposed to just the person who stands before the mic and sings?
absolutely. There's something about the playing of an instrument. There's some knowingnesses about playing the instrument that also just comes into huge helpfulness in singing. Yeah, I've taught some players like Steve Cotter took lessons from me for a while, you know, because he wanted to sound better as he was playing, like how they'll sing along with what they're playing.
That's interesting. It's always guitar players, isn't it? Yeah.
I think so. Well, believe it or not, it's been 2 hours.
Well, this is fun. Thanks for inviting me.
This was really fun. I really do want to play together.
We should. We should make it
Yeah,
a point.
let's make it a point. And also, I want to invite you to think of something to do over at the Kulaks.
I'm interested in that. I should just bop by some night. When are you there doing
Okay,
it?
well, we're kind of starting February 2nd is the Brazilian night. The next following week is the free night with Vinny. And the next night I'm thinking of making guitar night.
But it's always Fridays at this point.
Well, those are Thursdays.
Oh, okay.
Friday, I think the first Friday that I booked so far was the 24th, I want to say. Bob Shepard will bring his group in. So Friday and Saturday, pretty much so. He's still doing Mondays for songwriter nights. Songwriters can go in and perform one song and get a video.
Cool. Well, I'll stop in.
Okay, good.
Thanks again.
Thank you, Jerry Caleb. Thanks everybody for being here tomorrow. Two of those French guys are with us. It's Andrea Charlier and Benoit Cerise, a drummer and a pianist, and they have projects together.
Ask them about the Vibes player, Simon. I think
I
it's Morgan.
will. I will. And then Wednesday, Kenny Wild, who is an old friend of ours, and he's a bass player. He first came to town with a group called Seawind that was amazing. They had this residency at the Baked Potato, and they really, at that point, live, they sounded like Weather Report. Did you ever see them live at that point?
Uh, I think I did see them once. They were great, and I
Jerry.
think I saw them before I even met Kenny, but I know him well now.
Yeah, and they had the greatest singer, Pauline Wilson, who was about 4 foot high and just
Great. It was a great
ass
band.
off.
You know.
Yeah. And anyway, that was their beginning here. And then they all went on, almost all of them went on to like really become good studio, first call people. Anyway, so Kenny's going to be here on Wednesday. So that'll be really fun too.
Cool.
All
Well,
right.
great series.
Thanks. Great to see you. Thank you.
Bye bye.